Twitter rumors are that Ohio State quarterback Lincoln Kienholz is scheduled to visit Iowa next week. Some people on Twitter are talking and saying, here is one of the tweets, I'm just going to throw it up there, that Lincoln Kienholz will be visiting and going to Iowa sometime here in the next week. It says in April, from another tweet I read, said sometimes next week. Zach, we can get into, if Twitter is a reliable source for transfer portal information and all that stuff. However, I didn't just see this on Twitter. I actually saw other people making videos about it and other people talking about it. And I actually saw one Iowa guy say that he heard this is more of a possibility than just the Caleb Downs to Alabama or just the Quinshon Judkins back to Ole Miss rumors and stuff like that. So, Zach, what do you make of these rumors? Are they hogwash from Twitter? Are they something you believe a little bit in? What are your thoughts?
I think the likelihood of Lincoln Kienholz transferring is high. And I don't know if, honestly, I heard about this probably a couple hours before show. And so I think thinking about it, I think Iowa probably makes a bit of sense. Like, have you seen the quarterback room in Iowa?
Hey, Cade McNamara.
Yeah. Nothing is proven, right?
Right.
Besides Cade. Yeah. Like McNamara and
Deacon Hill is back, but yeah, you can say probably.
Right. Deacon Hill is back. Have you seen the quarterback room in Iowa?
Yeah.
It's bad, man. And Cade is running out of eligibility. So I think in terms of opportunity, it makes sense. I think Ohio State's quarterback room is loaded, right? Will Howard, it's probably between Will Howard, Devin Brown. I think Julian Sayin might have an outside shot, maybe halfway through the season if he's outperforming everybody. Nowhere is Lincoln Kienholz in that conversation, and he is a year older than the freshman coming in. I think he sees my guess is he sees the writing on the wall, and he does have a connection to Caleb Brown. I don't know how much they crossed over because I think they were a year removed, I think, or 2 years removed, but there's at least some sort of Ohio State connection that they have. So I see it as a possibility. I would put a lot of stock that Lincoln Kienholz will enter the transfer portal. I don't know if I would say Iowa is the landing spot.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. Christopher Wild says here in the chat, if I can bring it up. I just brought it up. There we go. I heard he was visiting April 20th for the Iowa spring game. Yes, that was the date I think I read, but I couldn't go back and find it. So I just said sometime to the next week because that's what I heard. But yeah, I agree with you, Zach. I think that there is definitely a likely possibility that Lincoln Kienholz is going to move on. If Devin Brown was not out calling people cowards and accusing them of living in their parents' basement, I might say Devin Brown. But, I don't want to be called out for being a coward by the backup quarterback or possibly starter based on the conversation we had when we were predicting starting quarterbacks a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I don't think that Devin Brown is going to be moving on because even if Will Howard is a starter this year, Devin Brown will most likely get the job next year. Now, Julian Sayin is getting a lot of hype, and so that could be a possibility there. But that's also the issue, too, is that Julian Sayin is playing so well for Ohio State in spring practice that there's the possibility of Julian Sayin possibly skipping over Lincoln Kienholz and most likely a red shirt for Air Noland coming in there. But if I'm Lincoln Kienholz and this is my first spring practice and another guy who it's his first spring practice and he's a year younger than me gets ready to pass me up, I can't say I blame him for transferring. Do I think that he's going to go to Iowa? I mean, they have a need. It's possible. I think there probably are some more attractive destinations out there than Iowa. So I would say that he could probably go somewhere like that. But like, if you look it up on the map, like where Iowa is at is not all that far away from where Lincoln is from. Now, I say that relative to where he's from, which is the Dakotas. So, obviously there's a lot that's spaced out over there. It's not like, South Carolina, North Carolina, or something like that, where everything's close to him. But the way I look at it, if I had to guess that one of the Ohio State quarterbacks is going to transfer, I would probably guess Lincoln Kienholz. I'm not going to predict it. And if there's a place in the country that needs a quarterback, it's Iowa, at the very least, to back up Cade McNamara. Now, I do think another piece of this is very interesting, which is that I think Iowa is starting to change a little bit. We saw the addition of Caleb Brown from Ohio State last year. And for those who don't know, if you do not follow Iowa very much or their fans, Iowa for a good amount of time has been cautious of recruiting over their current players. They are very much big into development and taking guys and developing them in their system and playing the older players. And this is something that even the fans were a little bit nervous about when they were going to the portal for Cade McNamara. Now, of course, when they got him, they were all very excited. But this is something that historically they've been a little nervous about, and that Kirk Ferentz has not wanted to do or tried to do as much. And so that's the piece of this too, is what are they selling to Lincoln Kienholz if they do contact him? If they say, Lincoln, you can come in and be the backup, is he going to want to do that? I mean, go from being third string, possibly fourth string at Ohio State to being the second string at Iowa? I mean, I know Cade is leaving next year, but if you bet on yourself and you bet on competition, he could compete for the starting job at Ohio State next year, more so. So what do you think about that, Zach? Do you think that that's kind of in the DNA of Iowa, or what do you think there?
I mean, I would think that it's to be the backup. And I think if I'm Lincoln, going back to the Cotton Bowl performance, he's not ready to be on the field, like at least in a meaningful way. Now, can he make a jump in the summer and spring ball? Sure. But I think if someone is in his ear telling him, oh, you should go somewhere where you can compete for a starting job, I think that's a bad call. He was, and part of that was the offensive line was a mess in that game. You didn't have Marvin Harrison. So I get it, but it wasn't all on him. It wasn't all on him, but you could tell that while he did a couple of good things, he was just not ready to be in that position. So, but I think the backup at Iowa, I think might be a more attractive position than to be. It's not just being third or fourth at Ohio State. You really don't have a clear pathway if you don't win the job this year, because a lot of the hype is on the freshmen. You have Devin Brown, who I think, at least from a leadership perspective, Devin Brown has been head and shoulders, I think, above Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And then Will Howard, I think, is everybody's assumptive starter at this point. So it'd be different if he were the true freshman that everybody is talking about. But he's going to be the redshirt freshman who is behind everybody at this point. And so there's no clear pathway for him to ever get on the field at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I would love for Lincoln to stay around one more year and at least experience the season with Ohio State this year. If he is going to go to Iowa, I mean, because that's just the rumor. But if that is indeed where he has his eyes set to go, then I would think you'd want to stick around Ohio State for a year and kind of learn under Ryan Day and learn under some, I'm not trying to shade Cade here, but some better quarterbacks in my mind. But at the same time, like if he feels like he needs to go somewhere and get a jump start in that system, so he's ready to start for the next year, that makes sense too. But
I think that's the key, is to get in, to have as much time to learn a system. Because I totally agree with you. He'd be much better served to be around some of the guys at Ohio State. But I think if his goal is to start, find a way to be an understudy and really learn that system.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, when it comes down to these rumors, like, do I think that he's visiting during the spring game? No. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if Iowa really did tamper with Caden Proctor and all that stuff, I can't remember if they actually got penalized for that or if that was just something that was discussed. But I think they've probably learned their lesson that they probably don't want to tamper and probably don't want to mess with that anymore. So I don't, peg Iowa as one of these like, big time tampering schools out there doing that. I feel like they probably feel like they could wait until he gets into the portal and then talk to him. But I mean, I really mean no disrespect to Iowa here, but if I'm Lincoln Kienholz, I was going to Washington at one point, who was in the national championship last year, and now I'm at Ohio State. I mean, yeah, the bowl game didn't look great, but I think that I'm probably trying to go somewhere with a little bit more cachet for the quarterback play, in my mind. Do you agree with that, Zach, or are you more into Iowa than I am?
Uh, I think it's tough. I mean, I think you're going to get well coached, and there is the question of, Brian Ferentz isn't there anymore, so I think there's maybe there's some positive stuff there. I mean, I think the thing is, I mean, he was at Washington. Washington, we have no idea where they're going to be in a year, or next year. And yes, you're at Ohio State, but I don't think he was like the top guy that Ohio State, like, obviously they shifted to him. So it's not the best spot, but I also don't think it's not South Florida
Right.
or, and I mean, it's still a Big Ten school. And I think it's at one of the most stable programs in the conference. So I think there are positives. I think the big negative is that Iowa is not known as an offensive juggernaut.
And
So
yeah, that was what I was going to say is like, like I said, I'm not trying to disrespect Iowa here and say that like they're a bad place to go or anything like that. I'm just saying like you look at where he has been invited to go or committed to go and where he's actually been. I mean, I think even Iowa fans would say, yeah, we haven't had the quarterback success in recent years that Ohio State and Washington has had. So I would tend to believe that he could find someplace to go, but maybe he wants to go someplace where he feels like it's even more likely that he starts or something like that. Or maybe he just really connects well with Tim Lester or whoever is the quarterback coach over there, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just like, I don't see the tweet being true. I don't see it as being truthful, but I could see him possibly going to Iowa if he has those, desires. So, um, Christopher Wild says, do you think Air takes the red shirt or takes the NIL and moves on to another team, gives Sayans spring success and Tavian St. Clair coming in for 2025? I don't know what to believe with Air. There's been so many rumors out there about he's homesick and he went home and then he came back and then spring break. And I mean, there's been so many rumors out there. I tend to believe he's going to stay and stick around for a year at the very least. But that's my thought. Do you have a thought on that, Zach?
I would think he stays a year, but it's always hard when you take two quarterbacks in the same class.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard to make it work long term. So I think you'd imagine that one of them will move on at some point. It's just when. And I would think the Air would stay. I mean, everything that he said leading up to signing day, and like when Julian Sayin committed, was he's locked in and he's sticking around. So,
yeah,
in the crazy world of NIL and transfer portal, like, that can always change. But I want to err on the side of believing a kid until proven otherwise.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Billy's right there with you too, saying when you recruit a blue chip or two every year, something's got to give. True. Mm-hmm. You don't just start these guys as seniors and then throw them to the NFL like you used to nowadays. There's too much movement, too much going on. Yep. So